By whom is the mind directed? By whom does the breath move?
Yeah, that is just, it's the ultimate haunting inquiry.
It really is a question that just stops you in your tracks the moment you actually hear it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you are listening to this right now, maybe you are on a train or, driving to work or just washing the dishes, your brain is effortlessly processing the audio of my voice, the speed of your car, the temperature of the room.
Right, all of it at once.
Exactly. But today, we are plunging into an ancient text that demands we turn the camera around. We are looking at the Kena Upanishad.
A text that dives into the absolute bedrock mystery of existence.
Yes, the mystery of consciousness itself. Like, what is the source of awareness? Why is the very mind you are using to listen to this sentence entirely blind to its own power source?
And that blindness isn't just an accident of biology. It is the fundamental architecture of human perception.
Which is wild to think about. But before we unravel this mystery, make sure to subscribe, like, and share your own reflections in the comments. We really want to hear your aha moments as we go through this.
Definitely. There are a lot of those moments in this text.
So to explore this, we are using a very specific lens for this deep dive. We're looking at the original cryptic poetry of the Kena Upanishad, but we are decoding it through the rigorous 1,000-year-old commentary of the philosopher Shankaracharya.
Right, alongside the modern, very accessible insights of Swami Nirmalanandagiri.
Yeah. And the core perspective that Shankaracharya brings to this, really the center of gravity for our entire discussion today, is that the self, what this tradition calls Atman or Brahman, is the unseen power behind all human faculties.
But, and this is crucial, it sets up this terrifying mind-bending paradox.
The ultimate catch-22.
Exactly. The self cannot be grasped by the mind, yet it is the very thing that enables the mind to function in the first place.
So, as we wade into these deep waters today, I want you to keep that opening question lingering in the back of your mind throughout the journey. By whom is the mind directed?
It's the perfect anchor.
Right. When we hit a complex philosophical wall today, just bring your attention back to that anchor. By whom is the mind directed?
Because the text itself, it doesn't waste any time at all. The Kena Upanishad opens immediately with a sequence of these interrogations.
It just comes right out swinging.
Yeah, it asks who empowers the senses, who empowers the mind, and who empowers the life force, which in Sanskrit is called prana.
Okay, prana, right.
It is establishing an inquiry into the genealogy of perception. It's refusing to accept the surface-level explanation of how we experience the world.
Let's unpack that genealogy.
Wait.
Because the text doesn't just leave us hanging with a question.
No, it gives an answer.
Right. But it's delivered in this classic, almost riddle-like Upanishadic poetry. It says that this unseen power, this Brahman, is the, quote, ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of speech, the vital air of the vital air, and the eye of the eye.
Beautiful poetry, but very dense.
Yeah, beautiful, sure. But we need to ground this. What does ear of the ear actually mean in terms of how we experience reality?
Well, Shankaracharya's commentary breaks this down with incredible precision. He points out that we have this habit of completely conflating our physical instruments of perception with consciousness itself.
Like, we think the eye is what actually sees.
Exactly. We think the ear hears. But Shankaracharya argues that the physical senses, the eye, the ear, the tongue, they are just biological hardware. They're entirely inert matter.
They're essentially meat lenses.
Meat lenses. Yes, exactly that. Think of a highly sophisticated digital camera.
Okay.
The lens of that camera can gather light. It can focus. It can adjust to depth of field. And the internal processor can translate that light into a digital file.
Sure, it does all the mechanical work.
Right. But the camera itself does not see. The camera has no subjective experience of the photograph.
Oh, wow.
It requires a conscious observer to look at the image and experience the sunset or the face of a child. Shankaracharya is saying that your physical eye, your optic nerve, and even the visual cortex of your brain are the camera.
They're the hardware.
They're incredibly complex matter, but they are still just matter. Yeah. They cannot, on their own, produce the subjective feeling of actually knowing you are seeing something.
Which brings us right to the hard problem of consciousness that modern neuroscientists and philosophers are still wrestling with today.
We're still stuck on it.
We really are. Like, we can map the entire brain. We can see which neurons fire when I look at a red apple. We can track the electrical impulse from the retina down the optic nerve into the occipital lobe.
We can map the whole route.
But nowhere in that biological wiring diagram can we find the actual experience of the color red. We can't find the listener or the watcher.
And that gap, that space between the biological mechanism and the subjective experience is exactly where the Kena Upanishad points.
Right.
If the mind and the senses are not illumined by a brighter, deeper intelligence within, like if they are not plugged into a source of pure awareness, they are completely incapable of performing their functions in a conscious way.
So the self is the ear of the ear.
Yes, because it is the foundational awareness that illuminates the mechanical vibrations of the eardrum and turns them into the experience of a symphony. Without it, the physical ear is just vibrating cartilage.
That's wild. Because we walk around completely identifying with the instruments. My internal monologue constantly says, I am my body, I am my mind, I am my anxious thoughts.
We all do it.
But this text is arguing that you are none of those things.
Yeah.
You are the invisible power that is making those things run.
Yeah.
And this feels deeply relevant to Swami Nirmalananda Giri's commentary, particularly when he talks about the psychological danger of not realizing this distinction.
Yeah.
Because he uses some very intense language here.
He really does. He refers to it as the living hell of helplessness.
Let's dig into that, because on the surface, living in a purely deterministic universe can actually feel kind of comforting for some people.
How so?
Well, if my actions in my life are just caused by random happenstance, by my genetics, by my brain chemistry, or by external nature, I am sort of off the hook.
Ah, right. No responsibility.
Exactly. My biology made me do it. So why does Nirmalananda Giri call that a living hell?
Because while determinism might offer, a temporary abdication of responsibility, it ultimately strips you of all agency.
Right.
If you believe you are merely the biological instrument, if you are just the camera, then you are entirely at the mercy of whatever light happens to hit your lens.
You're just reacting.
You are a victim of circumstance. Nirmalananda Giri suggests that if we view ourselves as just biological machines, or even as pawns moved by some distant transactional god pulling strings from the clouds, we end up drifting like seaweed on the ocean.
You have no anchor. You're just totally at the mercy of the waves.
Precisely. And we see the psychological toll of this everywhere in modern society. There's this pervasive underlying anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
People feel that their socioeconomic background, their inherited trauma, or just the random chaos of the universe completely dictates their reality. When you identify solely with the mind and body, you are identifying with things that are inherently fragile, changing, and subject to decay.
Which is terrifying.
It breeds a profound existential helplessness. You are constantly trying to protect an instrument that is inevitably going to break.
But the Kena Upanishad flips that entire paradigm on its head. It says that by discovering the true self, the Atman, which actually directs the mind, we reclaim our ultimate spiritual agency.
We stop being the seaweed.
Right. We realize we are not the seaweed drifting on the wave. We are intimately connected to the ocean itself. But this brings up a massive logistical problem. And I was really wrestling with this while reading through Shankaracharya's framework.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's the paradox of observation. It's like a flashlight trying to shine its beam on its own battery.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The mind is trying to look at the thing powering it. If the mind is powered by Brahman, by the self, but Brahman is formless and completely beyond the mind. Wait, how do we ever step out of the mind to realize it?
Yeah, it seems impossible.
How does the flashlight see its own battery?
Yeah.
If we can't think our way to it, are we just doomed to sit in the dark?
That is the exact friction point the ancient sages anticipated. And it is really the crux of the entire Upanishadic tradition.
So what's the answer?
The answer, drawn directly from Shankaracharya's commentary, is that you do not achieve this by turning the flashlight inward in an attempt to illuminate the battery.
Okay.
You don't think your way to Brahman. And we have to understand why the mind fails here. The human intellect is a phenomenal instrument, but it operates by dividing, categorizing, and making objects out of things.
Right. Splits things up.
It functions through duality. There is the thinker and there's the thing being thought about.
The subject and the object.
Yes. But Brahman is the ultimate subject. It is the pure eye awareness. Therefore, the moment you try to turn Brahman into an object of your thought, the moment you try to visualize it or conceptualize it or put it in a mental box, you are no longer dealing with Brahman.
You're just dealing with a thought.
You are dealing with a concept created by your own mind. It is like trying to bite your own teeth. The mechanism of biting cannot act upon itself.
Oh man, biting your own teeth. That really paints a picture. So if I sit down in meditation and I try to imagine a vast infinite light or a profound emptiness or a feeling of universal love, I mean, all of those things, no matter how beautiful or spiritual they feel, are still just objects appearing in my mind.
Exactly.
They're still the movie playing on the screen, not the screen itself.
That is a crucial distinction. All of those experiences are phenomenal. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They are observed by you, therefore they are not you.
So how do we proceed then if we can't think about it?
Shankaracharya says we do it through a process of rigorous negation. You stop pretending that you are the flashlight. You realize you are the energy. In these texts, this shift in identity is described as becoming the witness.
The witness.
Right.
Okay, break down the mechanics of that. What does that actually look like in practice?
It means that instead of trying to actively think about the self, you simply step back and observe the mind trying to think about the self.
You just watch it spin.
You watch the machinery spin, you notice that you have a thought, and you notice that the thought fades away. The very fact that you can observe your thoughts coming and going proves that you are not the thoughts.
Right, because if you were the thought, you'd disappear when it did.
Exactly. You are the silent, unmoving awareness that is currently watching the mental weather pass by. It requires a tremendous amount of subtlety because you aren't acquiring a new piece of data. You are undergoing a fundamental shift in where your center of gravity lies.
Which perfectly sets up one of the most provocative and challenging verses in the entire Kena Upanishad. Listeners, pay close attention to this next teaching, because Brahman is completely beyond thought and speech.
It's a huge turning point in the text.
It really is. The text drops this absolute hammer of a statement. It says, "Know that alone to be Brahman, and not this which is being worshipped." And it repeats that phrase over and over, "not this which is being worshipped."
Over and over.
That feels incredibly subversive. It feels like a direct challenge to almost every conventional religious practice on earth. Why is the text so adamant about what we shouldn't worship?
Because the Kena Upanishad is trying to break us out of our deepest cognitive habit. Shankaracharya points out that human beings have a desperate, natural tendency to objectify everything, especially the divine.
We want something to look at.
We want to point to something and say, there is God. We want to build a magnificent temple or carve a statue or construct a mental image of a supreme being in the sky, and we want to direct our worship outward toward that object.
It's safer that way. If God is out there, we can manage the relationship.
Exactly. It's manageable. But Shankaracharya insists that if you can point to it, if you can conceive of it in your mind, if you can describe its attributes with human speech, then by definition, it is an object.
And if it's an object?
If it is an object, it is not the ultimate reality. It is a creation, a projection of your own intellect. You cannot worship the eternal subject as an external object out there in the world.
So extrapolating from this, it really challenges the transactional nature of how people often treat spirituality.
Oh, massively.
We often treat the divine like a cosmic vending machine. You put in your prayers, your rituals, your good deeds, your specific cultural worship, and you expect a certain outcome from this external entity. You pray for a promotion or for good health or for a smooth journey.
Right, it's very tit for tat.
Yeah.
The Upanishad suggesting that this transactional framework is a lower level of understanding. It's not necessarily condemning it as evil, but it is exposing it as deeply limited and ultimately rooted in ignorance of true reality.
So what is true realization then?
True realization, according to this text, is not about forming a relationship with a supreme being separate from yourself. It is about an internal awakening to the fact that the divine is the very ground of your own awareness.
And the text gives a stark warning about the arrogance that comes with conventional intellectual knowledge of God. It says, if you think you know Brahman well, you know very little.
It's very blunt.
It basically says that the theologians, the scholars, the people who confidently say, I know exactly what God wants and what God is, they're actually the most ignorant. While those who recognize the sheer, terrifying unknowability of it are the truly wise.
It is the ultimate intellectual humility. I mean, think of the cup of seawater analogy from our source material.
Right. That's like someone walking up to the shore of the Pacific Ocean, dipping a tiny paper cup into the water, taking a sip, and then boldly declaring to everyone on the beach, I have tasted the water, therefore I have seen and understood the entirety of the ocean.
I know it all.
Yeah, I know the Mariana Trench, I know the coral reefs, I know the whales. It's pure, blinding arrogance.
Brutal arrogance.
The human mind is that tiny paper cup. It can perhaps grasp a tiny, localized reflection of the reality.
Mm.
It can feel a moment of peace or see a beautiful pattern. But to claim it encompasses the whole is just absurd.
And that arrogance is exactly what keeps a person trapped. If you think your intellect has captured the absolute, your intellect has actually just built a prison for your own awareness.
You stop looking.
You stop seeking. You settle for a concept instead of the reality. You worship the map instead of actually exploring the territory.
But this brings us to a really difficult crossroads. If the mind can't know it, and if those who say they know it are actually ignorant, how is it known at all?
It's the big question.
Are we just doomed to wander around in utter agnosticism? The sources mention a very specific, fascinating Sanskrit word here from Shankaracharya's commentary, Pratibodhaviditam. Break that down for me, because it seems to be the key to the whole puzzle.
This might be one of the most profound insights in Shankaracharya's entire commentary. Pratibodhaviditam translates to known in respect of every state of consciousness.
Known in respect of every state, meaning what? Mechanically.
Shankaracharya is solving the paradox here. He's saying that you are right. You cannot know Brahman as a new fact. You don't learn it the way you learn calculus or memorize historical dates.
Right.
But you already know it, because Brahman is the sheer bare awareness that watches you learn calculus. It is the continuous silent witness to all your states of being.
All our states. You mean the different ways the brain functions, like waking and dreaming?
Yes. The ancient Indian texts rigorously categorize human phenomenal experience into three main states. You have the waking state, the dream state, and the state of deep, dreamless sleep.
Okay.
Now, consider how wildly different your mind is in each of these states. In the waking state, your physical senses are turned outward. Your brain is processing external sensory data, light, sound, gravity. You have a very clear sense of I moving through physical space.
Right. The ego is fully online, managing traffic, answering emails.
Exactly. Then you go to sleep and enter the dream state. In a dream, the physical senses are shut down. Your eyes are closed, you are paralyzed in bed, yet you still experience a world.
A completely different world.
Yes. Your mind generates internal light, internal sound, internal characters. You might be flying or running from a monster. The environment has completely changed, the laws of physics have changed, but there is still a witness experiencing the dream.
Okay, so the I survives the transition from waking to dreaming.
Yeah.
The movie changed, but the screen is still there.
Exactly. But here is the ultimate test: deep, dreamless sleep. In deep sleep, what science calls slow wave sleep, the mind essentially powers down. There are no sensory inputs from the outside world, and there are no internal dream projections. It is a complete void. It is a blank screen.
And this is where it gets tricky, right? Because most people would say, well, I don't exist in deep sleep. I'm just gone. Machine is turned off.
But Shankaracharya challenges that assumption brilliantly. When you wake up in the morning from a deep, dreamless sleep, what is the first thing you say? You stretch and you say, wow, I slept so deeply I didn't experience anything at all.
Right. I say that all the time.
Shankaracharya asks, who is the I that knows you experienced nothing?
Oh, wow.
If your consciousness was entirely extinguished, you wouldn't have a memory of a peaceful void. You wouldn't know that you slept deeply. To know that there was an absence of experience requires a presence of awareness.
That is a staggering realization. The awareness doesn't turn off. It just doesn't have any objects to look at.
Right.
The flashlight is still on, but it's pointing into an empty sky.
That is a perfect analogy. The
Right.
flashlight is shining, but because there are no clouds, no birds, no objects for the light to bounce off of, it appears dark.
It feels like nothing.
But the uninterrupted continuum of awareness, that pure witnessing consciousness that underlies the chaotic data of waking, the illusions of dreaming, and the blank void of deep sleep, that is Pratibodhaviditam, that is Brahman. Therefore, it is known in every state of consciousness because it is the very fact that you are conscious.
So true knowledge isn't acquiring a new spiritual fact to put in the filing cabinet of the brain. It's a profound humility before the mystery of consciousness itself.
Yes.
It's recognizing that the filing cabinet, the files, the void of sleep, and the person reading the files are all illuminated by this one unchanging light.
And the psychological impact of that realization is an immense, unshakable peace. You are no longer desperately chasing a specific spiritual experience because you realize you are the ground of all experience.
You don't have to go find it.
You don't need to try to achieve the state of Brahman. You just need to drop the false identification with the changing states of mind.
But man, I have to admit, this is incredibly abstract. If I'm listening to this while cooking dinner, My brain is starting to overheat trying to hold the concept of an eternal subject, an unmoving witness, a light shining in a void.
It's a lot to hold.
It is. And the amazing thing about the Upanishadic tradition is that the ancient sages totally understood this. They knew human psychology. They knew that purely abstract philosophy is hard to retain.
So they gave us a story.
That's why, right in the middle of the Kena Upanishad, they drop this brilliant, vivid, almost cinematic story to explain what happens when our everyday faculties get arrogant and try to claim the power of the absolute for themselves.
Yes, the narrative allegory. It's a pedagogical masterpiece, really. It takes all of this high abstract theology and grounds it in a story about pride, power, and ultimate humility.
So I want to frame this for you, the listener. Listen closely to this story of the gods and Uma. Treat it like a mythic mirror because it beautifully reveals Brahman's ultimate supremacy in a way that maps perfectly onto our own psychological struggles with ego and intelligence.
Set the cosmic scene for us.
Okay, so the story opens with a massive cosmic conflict. The gods, the devas, who represent the forces of light and order, they win a huge, universe-shaking victory over the demons, the asuras.
A classic mythological setup.
Right. And because they won this great war, the gods become incredibly vain. They start strutting around the cosmos, puffing out their chests. And their internal monologue is essentially, the glory is ours. We are the greatest. We defeated the darkness entirely by our own power.
The classic trap of the victorious ego. We did it all ourselves.
Exactly. So Brahman, the ultimate reality, sees their vanity. And Brahman decides they need to be humbled. But it doesn't do it with a thunderbolt or a big booming voice. Brahman simply appears before the gods in the distance as a mysterious, enigmatic spirit, a Yaksha.
Just a silent presence.
It just sits there, silent and unmoving. The gods see this being, and they are unsettled. They don't recognize it. So they decide to send Agni, the god of fire, to go investigate and interrogate this spirit.
Agni is a very specific choice here.
Right, he is power incarnate. Agni approaches the silent spirit, and the spirit looks at him and asks, "Who are you, and what power do you possess?" Agni is super offended by the question. He boasts, "I am Agni. I am the god of fire, the consumer of worlds. I can burn anything on earth to absolute ashes in a second."
A very confident, absolute claim.
Very. So the spirit doesn't argue.
Yeah.
It just quietly places a single dry piece of straw on the ground between them and says, "Burn this."
Just a piece of straw.
Agni laughs, unleashes all his fury, all his cosmic heat. He attacks the straw with the heat of 1,000 suns, and he cannot singe a single microscopic fiber of the grass. He is totally humiliated. His power is entirely neutralized. He runs back to the other gods terrified, saying, "I couldn't find out who that spirit is. My power didn't work."
So then they escalate. They send Vayu.
Right. They send Vayu, the god of wind and storms. Vayu approaches, and the spirit asks the exact same question. Vayu puffs up and says, "I am Vayu. I am the breath of the cosmos. I can blow away anything in the universe, lift mountains, create hurricanes."
Again, total confidence.
The spirit points to the exact same piece of straw. "Blow this away." Vayu hits it with tornado force winds, an absolute tempest that should rip the earth apart. The straw doesn't budge a millimeter. It is completely unaffected. Vayu retreats in total shame.
They're batting 0.
Finally, the gods are panicked. They turn to Indra, the king of the gods, the greatest and most powerful of them all. They say, "You have to figure this out. You are our leader." Indra approaches the spirit, but before he can even open his mouth or unleash his power, the spirit completely vanishes.
It doesn't even give Indra the dignity of a test.
Exactly. The spirit just disappears. But in that empty space where the spirit just was, a woman appears. Her name is Uma, and she's described as blazing with beauty, decked in golden ornaments.
Yes, Uma.
She is God the Mother, the divine feminine. And Uma looks at a very confused, humbled Indra and reveals the truth. She says, "That spirit was Brahman, and that cosmic victory you gods have been celebrating, you were just reveling in Brahman's joy. Your victory was entirely due to Brahman's power flowing through you, not your own inherent greatness." And that is how the gods finally realized who was really in charge.
It is a stunning story. On the surface, it reads like a classic myth, but when we decode the allegory using Shankaracharya's commentary and Swami Nirmalanandagiri's insights, it becomes a devastatingly accurate map of our own internal psychology.
Break down the cast of characters for us, because this isn't just about ancient deities in the sky. Who are the gods in this story?
The gods, the devas, represent our own human faculties. They are the instruments we discussed earlier, our speech, our physical senses, our mind, and our intellect. In our daily lives, we achieve things. You solve a highly complex coding problem at work, you write a beautiful piece of music, you build a successful business, or you even have a breakthrough in therapy. And immediately, almost by default, our ego steps in, just like the devas, and says, I did this. Look how brilliant my intellect is. The glory is mine.
We take complete, localized ownership of the outcome. We think the flashlight generated its own electricity.
Yes, we completely forget the source of our abilities. Now look at the specific gods who fail, because their domains are deeply symbolic. Agni, the god of fire, represents speech, articulation, and the active, analyzing, fiery aspect of the human intellect.
The part that tries to figure everything out.
Exactly. The intellect tries to break things down, burn through the mystery, and understand things by categorizing them.
It's the part of us that wants to read 10 books on neuroscience to understand consciousness.
Precisely. And Vayu, the god of wind, represents the prana, the vital breath, and the gathering of external sensory data. Vayu tries to encompass the mystery by gathering movement and sensation. Their failure to burn or blow away a simple, insignificant piece of straw represents the absolute failure of the human intellect and the human senses to grasp the infinite. No matter how much intellectual heat you apply, no matter how much sensory wind you blow, you cannot move, change, or comprehend Brahman.
Wow.
The Kena Upanishad is making a radical claim here. Your faculties are entirely powerless when disconnected from their source. The intellect cannot solve the mystery of its own existence.
It's a humbling realization. The straw represents the reality that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant manifestation of the physical world is sustained by a power that our highest faculties cannot override.
Exactly.
But what about Indra? This is the part of the story that always fascinates me. Agni and Vayu get to try. They get to fail.
Yeah.
But when Indra approaches, the spirit just vanishes. Why? What are the mechanics of that disappearance?
To understand that, we have to understand what Indra represents. In Vedic psychology, Indra is the king of the senses. He represents the highest aspect of the individualized ego, the ahamkara, the I-maker.
The I-maker. That's a great term.
He is the core sense of separate identity.
The ultimate subject-object separator.
Yes. And here is the profound mechanical truth. When the pure, isolated ego approaches the absolute vanishes from perception.
Just disappears.
Because the ego and the absolute cannot coexist in the same perceptual space. The ego functions entirely by separation. I am here and the universe is over there. Brahman is non-dual. It is the indivisible unity of all things.
So they're fundamentally incompatible.
Exactly. If you approach the non-dual mystery as an ego trying to conquer, interrogate, or understand it as an object, the mystery will simply elude you. It's like trying to open a zip file with a basic text editor. The format is fundamentally incompatible. As long as you remain firmly anchored in your egoic identity, the ultimate reality will remain hidden.
That is a brilliant analogy. The text editor just sees scrambled, unintelligible code because it's not equipped to process the unified file.
Yeah.
The ego and the absolute cannot coexist.
Right.
But then the story takes this incredibly beautiful turn. The unmoving spirit vanishes and Uma appears in the empty space. Why Uma? Why does the Upanishad introduce the divine feminine here? What is the function of Uma in this philosophical framework?
This introduces a critical piece of the theology, which Swami Nirmalananda Giri emphasizes beautifully. Uma represents Prakriti, the Mahashakti.
Okay, hold on. Prakriti and Mahashakti, those are massive terms in Eastern philosophy. Break those down for me before we move on, because we can't lose the listener here.
Absolutely. If Brahman is the silent, unmoving, formless, witnessing awareness, the Father, the transcendent absolute, then Prakriti or Shakti is the dynamic, moving, creative energy of the universe.
Okay, so it's the action.
She is the mother. If Brahman is the blank screen at the movie theater, Prakriti is the light, the projector, and the movie itself. She is the intelligence that orchestrates the blooming of a flower, the orbit of the planets, and the firing of your neurons.
She is consciousness in motion, whereas Brahman is consciousness at rest.
Exactly. And the profound teaching here is that the human intellect, Indra, Agni, Vayu, cannot reach the unmoving Father directly. The transcendent absolute is too vast, too abstract, too formless for the ego to grasp.
Because it just vanishes.
Right. Therefore, the truth must be revealed to us by the mother. Uma represents divine grace, the natural, dynamic wisdom of the universe itself.
So we can't force our way into spiritual realization with our intellect. We can't burn the straw. We have to be humbled, like Indra. Our ego has to hit a wall, quiet down, and essentially surrender.
Yes, surrender is the key word.
And in that empty space of surrender, the truth is revealed to us not by our own effort, but through grace, through the moving energy of our own purified consciousness.
The mother is the ladder by which we ascend to the Father. It is through engaging with the dynamic world with a purified mind, recognizing the divine energy in all things, that the unmoving witness is finally revealed. The story is a masterclass in shifting our psychological posture from arrogance to receptive humility.
Which brings us to the most crucial part of this entire deep dive. What does this all mean for the modern listener? We've talked about unmoving spirits, cosmic fire gods, and the genealogy of perception. But how do we translate this ancient wisdom into a Tuesday afternoon?
That's the real test, isn't it?
Yeah. If someone is navigating a high-stress job, a difficult relationship, or just the overwhelming flood of the modern world, how does the Kena Upanishad help them?
The modern resonance of this text is arguably more vital right now than it was when it was composed thousands of years ago. We live in an age that is absolutely obsessed with data, information, and measurable outcomes.
For sure.
We are living in an Agni-dominant culture. We are obsessed with accumulating knowledge in that superficial, intellectual way. We subconsciously believe that if we just read enough articles, gather enough facts, listen to enough podcasts, or optimize our routines enough, we will finally understand the universe, conquer our anxiety, and be in total control of our lives.
We are constantly trying to burn the straw with data. We think the next piece of information is going to be the fire that finally solves our existential dread.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the Kena Upanishad is an invitation, a desperate plea, really to stop, to breathe, to recognize the inherent limitation of that approach. It invites us to stop being so obsessed with what we are aware of, the contents of our mind, our to-do lists, our worries, and start questioning the very source of our awareness.
It's shift in focus.
It is asking us to shift from being human doings back to human beings.
But how do we practically execute that shift? Because Shankaracharya emphasizes over and over that spiritual realization is experiential, not just intellectual. It's not enough for a listener to just hear us talk about the flashlight and the battery and think, oh, that's a neat concept, and then go back to yelling at traffic.
Shankaracharya points to two key doors: meditation and humility. Meditation, in this context, is the literal, practical application of becoming the witness. It is sitting down, closing your eyes, and deliberately quieting the Agni and Vayu of your own mind. You watch the thoughts arise, and instead of engaging with them, instead of letting Agni try to burn them, you just watch them pass. You practice resting in the awareness.
And humility.
Humility is the active recognition throughout your day that your ego is not the ultimate doer.
But the Kena Upanishad doesn't just say, go meditate and be humble, does it? It actually outlines a very specific foundation at the end of the text. It says that austerity, self-restraint, and action are the feet of this knowledge. It says the ancient teachings are its limbs and truth is its abode.
Yes, the text is incredibly grounded.
Wait, hold on. I have to stop you there because we need to address a massive contradiction here.
Contradictions, yeah.
We just spent 50 minutes establishing that Agni and Vayu, my intellect, my speech, my actions, are completely powerless to grasp Brahman. We established that the ego can't force realization. So why, at the very end of the text, are we suddenly being prescribed action, study, and self-restraint?
I see what you're saying.
If it's all just the gods failing to burn the straw anyway, why do I need to go do good deeds? Why not just sit under a tree and do absolutely nothing until Uma shows up?
That is the ultimate trap of pseudo-enlightenment, and it is a trap that many modern spiritual seekers fall into. They hear, the ego is an illusion, and action cannot bind the absolute, and they use that as an excuse for nihilism or ethical laziness.
Right. Nothing matters, so I won't do anything.
Shankaracharya is surgical in how he avoids this trap. He clarifies that ethical action, self-restraint, and study are not the cause of realization. You cannot buy enlightenment with good deeds, but they are the absolute necessary foundation.
Explain the difference between a cause and a foundation in this context.
Think of your mind, your phenomenal consciousness, as a mirror. Right now, for almost all of us, that mirror is covered in thick layers of mud.
Okay.
The mud is made of our selfish desires, our deep-seated anxieties, our arrogance, our petty jealousies, and our constant sensory distractions. If a mirror is covered in mud, it cannot reflect the sun. Now, the sun is always shining, Brahman is always there, perfectly illuminating reality, but your specific mirror is too dirty to catch the light.
I see where this is going.
Right. Action, austerity, self-restraint. Telling the truth, studying the wisdom texts, these ethical disciplines are the rags and the soapy water we use to clean the mirror. Doing a good deed or restraining a selfish impulse does not create the sun. It does not create Brahman.
But it prepares the instrument.
Exactly. It scrubs away the mud of the ego so that your mind becomes a clean, perfectly still surface, capable of reflecting the eternal witness that was always there.
That brings it all together perfectly. The actions don't purchase the realization, they clear the runway. They get the chaotic, noisy ego out of the way so that the natural grace of the universe, Uma, can reveal the truth that was hiding in plain sight the entire time.
Exactly.
You have to do the grueling, everyday work of being a good, disciplined human being. Not to earn a reward, but to be clean enough to receive the grace.
You sweep the temple not to summon the divine, but because the divine is already seated inside and it deserves a clean house.
Man, this has been an incredibly profound journey. It is staggering to think that thousands of years ago, people were sitting in the forests of ancient India asking the exact same questions about the hard problem of consciousness, the nature of the ego, and the source of awareness that quantum physicists and neuroscientists are arguing about today in modern laboratories.
It really is, and the most beautiful part is that they arrived at answers that are still breathtakingly relevant and practically applicable to how we live our lives today.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the Kena Upanishad, I want to leave you, the listener, with a core synthesized thought from everything we've explored today. The self, your true foundational nature, is the unseen power behind all your faculties. It is completely beyond the grasp of your thought, yet it is the absolute luminous source of your thought.
And to build on that, here is a final practice to carry into the rest of your day. The next time you look at something truly beautiful, a vibrant sunset, the intricate pattern of a leaf, or the face of someone you deeply love, or even the next time you successfully solve a complex, frustrating problem at work, just pause for a single second.
Just a second.
Don't just immediately consume the object. Don't just celebrate the intellectual solution and let the ego take the credit. In that moment of perception, try to feel the presence of the eye and the mind of the mind. Try to feel the silent, unmoving awareness that is quietly making that entire experience possible.
Feel the battery powering the flashlight. If this deep dive sparked an aha moment for you, please subscribe, like, and share your reflections in the comments below. We want to know, what is your piece of straw that your ego is currently twisting to burn? Let us know. And remember, this is just the beginning. We're going to be diving into other principal Upanishads, guided by Shankaracharya's profound commentary in our upcoming explorations. Until then, keep asking the echoing question, by whom is the mind directed?